Hey everyone, it's Khoa here, and in this podcast, I am pleased to introduce you to Eddie Dilleen. Eddie, he started off working in McDonald's. A few years later, he managed to own over 10 properties. He just keeps on adding more properties to his portfolio. I'll ask him a lot of questions on how he bought his first property, learn a lot about real estate, how to build up a property portfolio, and also how to think like a property investor. So you too could possibly own a portfolio just like Eddie did. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Eddie Dilleen. Thanks.
Oh, there we go. Cool.
Yeah, nice. How you going?
Yeah, very well. Very well. A little bit late, but it's good.
Yeah. Sorry to do this a bit late for you. So
No, that's
yeah,
that's all right, mate. I'm
yeah,
usually up till very, very late anyway, but yeah,
yeah. That's
always
all right.
hustling.
Always hustling. Yeah, I see your emails that get sent out. So you're a very busy man. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really good. Yeah, like what you're doing, man. We appreciate it. Yeah.
Hey, likewise, mate. I saw your. I've watched a lot of your stuff. I saw your recent one with Grant Cardone. That must have been massive. It was awesome.
Yeah. That was because he was organizing a tour around the world, and then he said that he was coming down to Australia, and then I reached out to him, and then he said yeah let's do it, and then went to his place in Double Bay, and yeah, it
Hmm.
was beautiful. It was really nice. So yeah, it was really good.
Would have been
Mm.
awesome.
Yeah. All right, Eddie. I really appreciate your time today, and yeah, I've been really looking forward to interviewing you. You're like um, you've got a really amazing story on how you built your property portfolio. You're still very young, and you've got a lot of attention through what you're doing. So I'm really happy to get you on the show, and I really appreciate your time today. So welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. It's awesome to be here. Really excited to be here. So yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. All right. So people know you as, a property investor. You've got a portfolio of properties, but before we get into all property investing and everything, I think initially your background, I think you grew up in Western Sydney, right? And then you had
Mm.
your first job in Macca's. So could you tell us a bit about that? What happened there? What was the story there?
Yeah, definitely. So I did grow up in Western Sydney. I grew up in the outer rings of Western Sydney,
Hmm.
and the suburb that I grew up in was called Mount Druitt. So if anyone
Okay.
knows or heard of that area, it's pretty uh, lower socioeconomic area, I guess. Pretty
Yeah.
scary. Um, Growing up, I grew up with a single mom on a pension, the
Mm.
poorest person pretty much I knew at the time.
Yeah.
No one in my family owned a property at all.
None of
So
them. Okay.
mum and dad broke up. Mum's only source of income was on the pension,
Yeah.
so we lived in housing commission. Yeah, it was just pretty
Yeah.
tough times basically. And
Yeah.
but that was the driving factor behind the whole thing I've done. Basically, not having a home to call my own,
Yeah.
and going to school, all my friends would. Yeah, I knew one day they were going to inherit their family's properties and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like,
Yeah.
if something doesn't change now, if I don't do something drastic, then
Yeah.
this whole thing's just going to keep on going.
Yeah.
Um, so I was still in school. I got my first job when I was like 14 years old.
So you're
Worked at
14. Like,
McDonald's.
wow, incredible.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
back then, coming from a really, I guess, poor neighborhood and, poor family kind of thing, I don't even know what university was. Like,
Yeah.
wasn't
Wow.
even on the radar. So it
Yeah.
was a totally different world.
Okay.
And yeah, so I worked at McDonald's, and it was just at the age of like 15, 16, I was like, you know what? No one owns a property in my house. I can see
Mm.
from, reading books and all that kind of stuff, which I forced myself to do because I was horrible in school. But I realized that if you want to create wealth, if you want to get, make money in the long term, so you're not having to struggle for the rest of your
Yeah.
life,
Mm-hmm.
you got to own some property. So
Yeah, definitely.
that's where my, when I first started getting interested in property, I was like 15, 16, and I saved up a deposit working at McDonald's, and I
Yeah.
bought that first investment property at 18.
So
So
cool.
yeah,
That's
10 years later,
amazing.
I've got money.
Yeah. Okay. So so you grew up in Mount Druitt, and then so you looked around your surroundings and you weren't too happy with it. So you would say that would be the key driver for you. You don't want to live like this anymore, right? Therefore, you started learning about property and everything. Is that pretty much the progression there?
Oh, definitely. It was a lot
Okay.
of pain and frustration. Like, mum found it very, very hard to put food on the table half the times.
Yeah.
Like, we grew up in the old, worst, moldy old house kind of thing. That was just housing
Yeah.
commission, was welfare, basically.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, so that just, it frustrated me a lot, frustrated
Mm.
myself a lot growing up. And that kind of lit the fire. And then, 17, 18, I was like, what can I do to make money? Because I don't know how.
Yeah,
None of my family even had a job really. So
yeah. That's incredible. There was no mentors or anything like that, or you just okay, amazing. Okay, so you got a job at Macca's, right? What were you doing at Macca's? You just working like just making burgers
just
and stuff. Yeah,
cashier,
cashiers. Yeah,
basically,
okay, yeah.
flipping burgers and drive-through.
Okay.
I worked at KFC as well.
KFC. Okay.
Yeah, so at the age of 18, like finally I finished school. I just like I didn't breeze by school, but like I made it through school somehow. I didn't
Yep.
really, probably got the worst grades out of everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I got a full-time job. So I got
Yep.
full-time jobs. I was working in like administration somehow. I was like 18-year-old kid working in administration. Just didn't know what I was doing. Very under minimum wage.
Yep,
And
okay.
I was working at McDonald's at the same time and saved that deposit.
Yep. And I think you used to work as a working the bar as well. Like you had a second job working as a barman as well. That's incredible.
Yeah, I've worked at like 4 different RSL pubs and all that kind of stuff, just pouring beers behind like the
just do whatever it takes, right?
100%. Yeah, I work full time, and then after that, I would also work at a bar, just pouring beers, trying to make as much money. So I do 70, 80, 100-hour weeks kind of thing to just try to save deposits. And nowadays I don't do that anymore, but it's I definitely remember it.
Yeah. Okay, so that was your vision, right? You had the real estate vision. You want to build a property portfolio, so you started working in jobs like that to save up the deposit, right? Okay, so what was it like what did you do to get that first property? What did you do? So you were saving, and was it when you saved the right amount, that's when you started looking, or were you already looking? What happened then?
Yeah, I was already looking on real estate and domain and just online and going to different, wasn't really going into opens or anything like that, but I was looking online from the age of like 16, 17 when I was first started saving, and I was just always scrolling. I was one of the people, and I speak to a lot of people today that they're always scrolling real estate and all that kind of stuff. About property. But I was doing that from like 16, 17. So by the time 18 hit, I did have around about $18,000 to $20,000 because I saved for like 2 years. So it wasn't much in over 2 years. It was like $200 a week. And I think anyone could do that. Like,
it requires a lot of discipline. You got that discipline there. That's really admirable, mate. So really,
So I finally started looking at properties, and even in Western Sydney where I lived, property prices were still very expensive compared to what I made at the time. I spoke to different mortgage brokers and banks, and I just tried to educate myself by trying to figure stuff out, because I couldn't turn to my mum because she didn't own a property. I couldn't turn to a brother, cousins, a very, very small family, because my family originated from America. So it's pretty much just like 5 of us in Australia, and no one owns a property. So who else would I speak to?
Yeah, that's incredible.
Really?
Yeah. Wow.
So basically, a lot of self-education, really, and eventually I got a pre-approval through St. George Bank, and it was very, very small. All they could lend me was like 150,000 basically, and I looked for a property in my local area, and I couldn't afford anything in my local area, so I looked outside. We used to go holidaying at the Central Coast around the entrance, about an hour and a half out of Sydney, and I was like, that's the only other place I know. Let me look there, and I found I bought a 2-bedroom unit there. And that's been rented out ever since.
So you saw the property, and then you just put an offer in, and then you just bought it, and that was it. Like, what was going through your mind when you first bought your first property? Like, what would were you thinking about? Okay, if this were to fail, what would you do? What was your thinking process behind that? Because I know that a lot of people are so scared about buying, right, the first property. I'm just curious how you overcame all that type of stuff.
I was very terrified, but I was also pretty excited. I kind of, even to this day and back then, I even just simplified it. I was like, wait a minute, this property's already rented out. And I was like, I bought it for like 138,000. It was so cheap looking back at it. I wish I bought 10 more of those exact ones at the time.
You've still got it, right?
Still got it. Yeah, nice. Still got all 20 properties I've got. So I bought it for 138,000. It was, even back then, this is like 10, 11 years ago probably. It was renting for $220 per week. So, but that covered enough basically to cover things like council rates, water rates, mortgage, and that kind of stuff. So I was like, it's covering itself more or less. Even if I And even if the tenant moves out and runs away or does something scary like that, it's small. I just did the best thing I think possible, just starting small, and then you can go big later on.
Yeah.
Especially when you're young.
Yep. Okay, awesome. So you took that chance, took a leap, and you held on to the property. You're still working at Macca's and other places, right, just to help support. Okay, amazing. Okay, and then what about the second property? When you move on to the second property, I think there was a bit of a gap there or something, or what happened there? What would you do?
Yeah, definitely. So I probably took about a year and a half off just because I thought that was my life goal, basically, buy the first property.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah.
My expectations were like, I'll just relax now. So that was probably one of the year and a half or 2 years that I just didn't do anything. I actually regret not doing that.
Okay.
Because I just didn't have my information right. I thought that buying a property, I'd be set, and buying property ain't, making anybody set, really.
Yeah.
So I know that now, but back then I was like, I'm set now. But so I didn't do anything for about a year and a half. Just did the, thing you do, go out party when you're younger and stuff like that, waste money. But after that, I looked for other properties around the local area. And at the time when my mum and dad basically broke up, my father was living in South Australia, and I would go visit every now and then. And properties were extremely cheap back then. There's another 8-9 years ago.
Okay.
So I would look at a few properties here and there and notice how incredibly cheap they were and how high the rental yield was, how high the cash flow was on that. And I was like, even though I'm young, yes, these are going to grow over time. They're not, maybe they're not going to have super capital growth as an example, but they're going to grow over time, just like everything will. So I was like, that seems like something more fundamental that I can get into. And I bought a second property there, which was a bank repossession.
Okay.
The bank had repossessed it from the previous owner. And so I managed to always stick to the 3 key factors, which I do now, which is buying with high yield, buying for capital growth, but also buying under market value. So really under what it's worth. So you're making instant equity kind of thing.
Yep. So you said that you look up, it was a bank repossessed property, and that's how you were able to get it. So you tend to look up directories and stuff like of repossessed properties and inquire there, or is it through referrals or?
It's a lot of through. In the beginning, it was just a lot of luck and trial and error, and like always looking at properties and being on real estate and all that kind of stuff, like 16 hours a day, going crazy about it. But that one was actually listed through a real estate agent or through Harcourts, and they hadn't had it online yet. But I was speaking with that particular agent and just happened to be in the right time, in the right place. Speaking with a bunch of agents trying to find properties, is like, there's a bank repossession coming up. Let me show you this. And then that's how it originated. It was just because of this talking to so many different people at different times.
Yeah. What would be like the percentage drop of the property that you'll purchase? Would it be 30% under market value, or would it be?
At that time, I'd say that was probably anywhere between 15 to 25% below what comparable sales are at. Like, I probably could have done a lot better knowing what I know now, as everyone does.
But you're learning,
time, it was just learning. And with every experience, with every property I purchased, I gained more knowledge and more and more and more. That, and especially more than anything's going to teach you, such as like going to school or anything like that. Like, that doesn't teach you anything.
So you probably got really inspired by watching YouTube videos and reading books and stuff, and then you just took action, and then that's how you learned. You just accelerated your learning, wasn't it?
Definitely, reading property investment books and all that kind of stuff. And even though a lot of the ones I was reading were like from 15 years ago, when the market was different, but it all helped.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, great. And and eventually you wrote a book called 10 Properties by 25, right? Could you tell us a bit about that book there?
So it was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. I cannot barely. I didn't do really well in school, so I can't really write, can't really read very well.
It's crazy. Wow. Can't believe it. Like, you went through all this stuff and like you were able to, build all this property. It's just amazing.
Appreciate that. So I started writing that book, and because a lot of as soon as I hit probably number 6, I'd say, and I was like 23 years old or 24 or something like that, and then I hit 7, 8, 9, 10. I went in through a different property investor magazines and all that kind of stuff that was out there, and then from there that led to a few like TV interviews on Channel 7 and Channel 9 and that kind of thing. And then everyone was just saying, basically, everyone was contacting me about what did I do, etc. So in the initial of the book, I just basically wrote that book as an ebook, and I didn't even charge for it. I was like, this is just to help anyone else that's out there that might have been in a similar situation myself, that we just didn't, have anyone around them at all. So I basically I wrote a book, and it was basically just the whole story when I went from got 10 properties in my portfolio by 25 years old. And hopefully I'll do another one soon now that I hit 20 properties by 28, but we'll see.
And what's your future goals? Obviously aiming for the 100, obviously.
Yeah, definitely.
Before 35 maybe, or something. Maybe even faster. We'll see what happens. Oh wow!
Definitely, I think so. It's just going to keep going, I think, and listening to like podcasts like yourself where you interview people, and some of those people that like Grant Cardone, who've got like thousands of properties. So like I'm like, oh wow, 20.
Yeah, I like what. Speaking of Grant Cardone, like I've been obviously a big fan of him, and I listen to a lot of his stuff, and he talks a lot about buying properties that have many doors, because I think the first property he bought was just a single family home. And then he felt really good. He bought it, but the problem is that when the tenant moved out, he didn't have any income. So then he had to, keep paying for it, and he just couldn't handle it. But then now he just keeps on buying properties that have multiple doors. That's one of his criterias. So if like 50% vacancy, then he's still got the other 50%, right? So I think there's a lot of strategies. And for you, like, do you do the same thing as well? You have multiple doors, or you just, have multiple tenants in one house, or just you probably have a different strategy, don't you?
Yeah, a little bit. Like some of the more recent properties I bought, they're like dual properties. So you've got like two properties on the one title that are basically one house, and there's a divided wall kind of thing. So I've got a couple properties, but initially they were just single dwellings, like single houses and townhouses and that kind of stuff. Because I guess he's obviously buying it in America, and I definitely want to start buying in America as well, because I just I just realized I finally actually looked at the paperwork after 28 years that I actually am an American citizen also. So hopefully that will allow me to buy properties in America as well.
Yeah, okay, that'll be good. Yeah.
Hopefully. I haven't really looked into it much yet, but because my mom and dad are from America, apparently I've seen paperwork that should be able to hopefully go there and buy property.
Give it a shot.
Yeah, definitely. But some of the properties I've got, and I eventually will buy unit blocks, because I think he's bought unit blocks and things that are like 20, 50 properties at a time. They just require, in the beginning when I was buying 2, 3, 4, they require a lot more capital, those bigger chunk deals usually. So instead of, with banks as an example, instead of doing 10 or 20, they might require 30 or 40% deposit. So now I could probably do that, but in the beginning I'd probably be like, I think I'd probably be a bit scared, or wouldn't be able to maybe back then.
Yeah. Oh man, that's amazing. Okay. Let's have a look at, I'm curious about your mindset as well, because we spoke a bit about the fear side of things when you purchase an investment property, but also when you were growing up, there was that, looking around you didn't have many mentors, you didn't have many friends that were doing these type of things. So you had to get this information yourself, try it out and everything. And there's a lot of social pressure that's pushing you down to, stay normal, right? But you went out and broke past that. So what would your advice be in terms of overcoming that social pressure, like getting out from your surroundings and stuff? Because, as you know, a lot of people, can drag you down, right? But you seem to rise above it and, achieve this amazing thing. So what is it?
I think it's a combination of things that happened for me. Like when I remember when I first started working, and I'd listen to people that were older than me, and especially about the property side of things, I'd be like, oh, I want to buy property. And the only thing they ever said was, I wish I bought property when I was younger. I wish I did this when I was younger. So I was like, if everyone's regretting doing that, then clearly that's something to avoid. But I guess a lot of people don't think to ask, or they just focus too much on right now. Whereas I guess growing up for myself from a really, really poor family and having those struggles, I'd always like, all right, I want to enjoy now as everyone else does, but I also want to make sure that if this is a crap situation I'm in right now, I don't want to be in the same situation in 5 years. So trying to just have one eye on the future as well. But also obviously enjoy the present and that kind of thing, but just really prepare for the future, because you don't want to be in the same position in 3-4 years and just live with regret. Regret's probably the worst thing. I've heard other people say that as well. Like, you don't want to be that person in 5-10 years time and saying, I could have done this, I could have done that.
Yeah.
And just hating yourself kind of thing. So
yeah. Okay. Cool. And how about dealing with like fear when you're investing and everything? Like you seem very calm. So would you consider yourself like when you're investing in property, would you become like emotional if you lose a lot of money, or would you just accept things and just like come up with a solution to that? Like how would your response be?
it's definitely evolved over the years. In the beginning, it was basically like I would get very emotional when something would happen. Let's say a hot water heater breaks or something breaks
Yeah.
in the property.
Okay.
And I'd be like, oh, I don't have money to pay for this and all that kind of stuff. And I'd just be one of those people that just fly off the handle and get very upset and angry and, pissed off and that kind of stuff. But now it's just, don't worry about it. Like just fix it, move on, go to the next one. Focus on growth, and you're going to have problems along the way. But now it's just, I try not to let the small stuff phase me anymore, because no matter what you do in life, I think, and you're going to have issues that come up. So you got to take the good with the bad, but as long as you just keep focusing on the next one. Now, every time I'm buying one, I'm just like, all right, even though it hasn't even finished settling yet, I'm already thinking about the next one. I'm not even thinking about that's old news.
Awesome. Awesome. Love it. Okay, cool. And all right then. So I think I heard on another podcast you were talking about different buying criterias when you're buying properties, right? I think there's you look at market cycles per each for each state. Is that true? Like you look at different market cycles for Sydney and Perth and everything. So that obviously changes for each state, and then that's how you enter and everything. Is that one of your buying criteria?
Oh, definitely. If we were to look at Australia as a whole, as an example, and this is where a lot of people get it wrong, I believe, and a lot of property economists see it the exact same way. So I definitely believe I'm right in this area. Like Australia is definitely not one property market. A lot of people say, "Oh, the market's going up, it's going down," and that just doesn't. It frustrates me so much, because every single state has a different market that's doing different things at different times. So, like as an example, I've really studied the markets and looked back what's happened over the past 15, 20, 30, 40 years, and the different cycles, of growth cycles, and then plateau and different phases it's gone through. So, and I've looked at what's happened in different states, mix that with also what's happened over the past 30 years of different states and how much they've grown in percentage wise. So what I've found, usually you've got, states, the two biggest as an example, Sydney and Melbourne, they'll go at different times. Then once they're in that plateau kind of phase, other states start to rise. Like you had Tasmania that's gone through a recent property cycle as well that just came out of nowhere. And then you've also got Brisbane that a lot of people are investing in right now because it's kind of been held back since the GFC. So usually when one's flat, the other one is rising. And I feel that you always want to buy before a boom, not after it, which makes sense. You want to get it when it's at the rock bottom. And most property investors, they only think very short-sighted. I think they think, what's happened the last 5 years? And if it's had growth the last 5 years, it's going to have growth the next 5 years in the same kind of thing. Whereas it's not like that, from my opinion. Some of the best times to grow for that growth cycle is right after a plateau or in a weak period of the market.
Okay, so you're pretty good at timing things, where you've analyzed the statistics and the trends already, and therefore you've got a pretty good gist of it, of when it's plateauing, and then that's when you enter the market. Okay.
Oh, definitely. I've been living and breathing like property, and just looking at properties how much they've sold for at what times and what they're rented out for, going through this night and day basically. So if you look at even Sydney and Melbourne, everyone thinks Sydney and Melbourne is huge growth states as an example, right? Sydney and Melbourne, the real growth really started happening around 2013, 14.
Okay.
And then it's really started. A combination of things. It was held back since the GFC for quite some time. You had population growth, interest rates started to grow down as well. Like I started buying and they were like 7%, now they're like 3%.
Oh, wow.
So a combination of things, supply and demand, etc. But they have gone through that cycle between 2013, 14 to 2017, 18.
Okay. And
then been pretty much dead flat since, or they've gone down even a little bit, and now they've kind of gone up, and they're basically in that plateau phase. if you actually rewind the clock back and you stand in Sydney in 2013 and you look backwards, the previous 5 years or 7 years before 2013, dead flat, not much at all going on. So if you're one of those people back then that said, oh, look at the last 5 years, that's going to forecast the next 5 years. So don't buy in Sydney or Melbourne. Would have missed the entire growth cycle.
Yeah, definitely. I've been looking at the Perth market. I've got a just got a townhouse in Perth, and after 2015, everything just started crashing. Lost so much value from the house, and yeah. So but I don't know. I get a feeling it might go back up in the next few years. You know, might rebound and stuff. So would you consider Perth to, that there's a potential of rebounding or yeah?
Yeah, I've definitely started looking. I think in the next couple of years, we'll definitely see a bit of rebound there for sure. I think it's a combination of what I look at the moment is the yield as well. What are the gross yields in a lot of the metro areas? So if you're within, say, 25 minutes drive, right? Let's put a circle around Perth, 25 minutes out. What are the rough yields you can find for houses and townhouses within 5Ks to 35Ks out? In Brisbane market right now, it's the third largest capital city. So you got about 2.5 million people there ish. And then you got, it's very close to the Gold Coast. You're 45 minutes away. Then you got 500,000 there. So that whole kind of region, you got 3 million plus or more and 4 million in Queensland, which is the third largest capital city. But the yields there are massive right now. When the growth starts to really rise over the next 2, 3, 4 years, the yield just shrinks as it has in Sydney and Melbourne. But right now is like, I think it's a really amazing time to be buying when a lot of people are scared about this whole Corona thing. So
yeah. Okay, interesting, cool. Okay, all right then. So I've got a few questions from some of my listeners as well. So this one came from Jamal, and he says that when you first started, did you find properties yourself, or did you get any help to do it, or was it just all you?
Yeah, so it was completely myself, basically. Like when I was 18, basically finding my first property, there was no one around me. I didn't know anyone. I didn't even know. There wasn't even, I don't even remember YouTube being around back then. It probably was, but it was probably very, very new. So there wasn't, back in, this is 2010-ish. I don't think there was any podcasts back around then either.
No,
maybe.
So,
So, since then, it's pretty much been all myself, just trial and error. I've read property investment books. I have, tried to speak to people when I had maybe 3 or 4. Maybe a mortgage broker might have had 5 or 6. But even then, a lot of it's you just got to trial and error. And if someone has, 5, 10, 15, 20, then take their advice. But I used to take advice of, as an example, a mortgage broker one time. I was up to like 6, 7 properties, and someone referred to me to this mortgage broker, said he's the best mortgage broker. He's been in the game 20 years. He'll get you the lowest. He'll save you to make you the most money, etc. He had like 2 properties. And now looking back at it now, he wouldn't know how to structure a portfolio of 15, 20 properties.
Wow.
So I just realize you have to qualify everyone you use, whether it's a broker, an accountant, or whatever. You actually got to just tell them to cut the shit and say, how many properties do you have?
Exactly. 100% agree. Yeah. Because it's always about the quality advice, right?
I saw financial advisors before, and I was like, wait a minute, this guy's like my age. He's got his degree.
Yeah, exactly.
He hasn't done anything. So what are they going? He's like, you want to buy life insurance? I'm just like, they're just there to sell you life insurance. So these financial advisors, you can have all the credentials, you can have all the book smarts and university degrees in the world, but it doesn't mean anything to me.
I love how realistic you are. I love it how you just cut through the crap and you just you need to see the credentials. I think that's another thing that Grant Cardone talks about as well. Always it's a mistake that a lot of people make, is that they don't ask for proof. People's too scared to ask for proof, but show me the proof. How many properties do you have? It's like if you go to the gym and you want to get a personal trainer, but the guy doesn't have abs or whatever it is, right? So
100%. 100%. I remember telling that to a lot of people. So they're using the same example. You're going to take the advice from Arnold Schwarzenegger, or you're going to take advice from this guy that doesn't have any muscle, or has a uni degree or fitness degree. I'd listen to the champ.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. All right then. Cool. All right then. So, what about tenants as well? Like, obviously, you hire a property manager to get you tenants for all your properties and everything. Like that's pretty much the process, the standard process there for all your properties. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So
Yeah. Okay.
I've always used a property manager. And I've never even tried to manage the properties myself. I've never even spoken to one of my tenants directly before,
Okay.
actually.
That's
Like
okay.
all emotion out of it.
Love it.
So
Yeah.
yeah, throughout the last years, I've just been heavily involved in like the buying property, having a property buyers agency. I've even started a property management company over the last few years as well. So now in different state in Brisbane at the moment, where I just manage all my properties and clients' properties and things like that.
Yeah. Okay. No worries then. Cool. Cool. Okay. And I think you've got a few workshops that you conduct in within Australia. Is that right? Yeah. And you teach people how to invest in properties. Yeah.
Yeah, occasionally. So we'll do basically, generally, it's a very rare service, but generally it's a one-on-one kind of meeting where I'll sit down with people like investors that want to invest in property. And I've been to all the seminars and all
Buyer's
that kind of
agency,
stuff.
right? Is that
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've got a property buyers agency, and I've also we also have basically the component where people just sometimes want to get guidance. Maybe they want to learn more about property investing, but they actually want to sit down, not with a financial advisor, but with someone that's about to bought property. So that's where I'll just sit down. We'll have a generally, friendly chat and just talk all things property and really outline, a guide on how I've grown my portfolio, what I've learned about finance, property market structure. How can you use a strategy to then grow that portfolio and really scale it up big?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's generally just one-on-one chats like that.
And you're open to mentorships as well. Like if someone wants to hire you, as a coach to walk them through how to buy the first property and build a portfolio, you're open to that as well.
Definitely open to it. I haven't actually done like any physical mentoring programs or anything like that before. We've got the property buyers agency side where a lot of people that if they're like busy professionals and they don't physically have the time, maybe they've got a wife, kids, family, and they don't want to be out there knocking on doors and going to open homes and flying to different states all the time. They'll just use the property buyers agency because if they get access to something that's off the market, a bank of possession, and if they physically see they're buying something that is 50,000 below what it's worth, that's invaluable. So they'll just use money basically.
I think I saw one of the emails that KITT got sent out, and you had the property price there, and it had the amount of rent that you expect to pay for it, and it's really good as well. It's you got a really good high yield in terms of the rent as well. So it's good how you offer those opportunities and people can see it, and then they can make a decision as well. So it's awesome.
100%.
All right then. So okay, what if you were to? One of my favorite questions is what happens if, let's say, that you were to step inside a time machine, push a button, and go back maybe about 10, 15 years. What would you say to your younger self?
Well, that's a little bit of a hard one.
Do the same thing.
Buy more property.
Buy more property. Yeah, that's a dumb question.
No, I definitely say, just go for it because I tell my younger self, just go for it. Buy as many properties as you can. Take more risk because looking back on it now, like I think everyone will get to the end of the road one day and say I could have done better, and that's just everyone's going to do that. But especially with like if a person's got that really competitive drive and they just want to continue bettering themselves, and even if people that I'm sure that there's lots of people going to listen to this podcast, and the fact that they're doing that is a really, really good sign because it means they want to better themselves. It means that they want to learn more and grow their self so that they can get to bigger and better places in the future. So everything's going to work itself out basically. I'd also say everything's going to be.
That's awesome. Yeah, you're a true inspiration to be honest. I mean, like, look at what you've achieved. You started off in Macca's and you're really driven. You saved up a lot of money by working 2 jobs. You stashed all the money and you took a leap of faith and you bought your first property and then you built it up and and you kept educating yourself. It takes tremendous discipline and you're really frugal as well, I think. It takes a lot of effort to be frugal and there's a lot of temptation out there, isn't there? So, I think that's one of the secrets to success, right? To be frugal,
Definitely in the beginning. Like I had like 9 properties that was on TV a bunch of times, or like 12 properties, and I was driving around like a Ford Laser. You know, it was
Nice.
like
Love it.
it was, oh
No
yeah,
one
the old
knows.
Laser. Yeah, and I was like, you know, I'm pretty sure. Well, a lot of other people have done that as well. Like I've heard before, Grant Cardone's done that too. So like a lot of people have done that.
Yeah, yeah.
That's how you get ahead. You know, you don't go off and buy a flashy car right away. You leave that for later.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, speaking of Grant, like I think he's got Cardone Capital at the moment. I'm not sure how that whole thing works. I think he's got a conglomerate of all these properties, and I think you invest and then get a certain return and everything. Are you thinking about doing something like that in the future? Have you your own little capital thing, or see what happens? Or
I've got to learn more about it. Definitely, I
yeah,
think
yeah,
there's
yeah,
a lack of information there that I've just
yeah,
I've been too focused. I've been focused on stuff, and I'm trying to keep learning as well.
yeah.
But I've definitely got to learn more about it for sure.
Yeah, awesome, cool, cool. All right, then. So, how can people get in contact with you and find out what you're up to and you know, invest in your courses and then your training and stuff?
Yeah, definitely. So they can contact me if they just Google my name, Eddie Dilleen, it should pop up with my website. They can reach out on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. I'm on all that kind of stuff, and always like
Mm,
talking to people that are inspired and want to invest in property and just want to get ahead in life.
yeah, definitely. All right, Eddie, I really appreciate your time today. It's true honor to interview you, and yeah, I really appreciate you sharing the wisdom, and I wish you all success for your future endeavors, and you know, look forward to seeing your big property empire no time as well. So, congratulations on all your success.
Thanks so much. It's been
Good.
amazing to be here. I really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
no worries. Thanks, Eddie. Cool.